Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Astronomical Sports Podcast. My name is Clint. I'm your host. And tonight, I wanted to go over round one of the NFL draft. And then there's two other things that I wanted to bring up. And I think I'm going to start with those first. I just kind of wanted to get this off my chest. I've been sitting here watching these AT&T commercials with Matthew Stafford. And I know the narrative around Stafford has been how, he was stuck in a poor situation. He was rescued, so to speak, by the Rams and took him to the promised land, brought him a Super Bowl, yada yada yada, all that great stuff. And I commend him for it. He played well. That team played very well down the stretch. They're made up of some superstars, a lot of talent. They just had a lot of things going for them at the right time. So, congrats, and it's awesome. But I just want everybody to remember, Matthew Stafford chose to sign an extension with the Detroit Lions, and he stayed there and was a part of the organization, for much longer than his rookie contract. It was only a four 4 to 5 year deal if they exercised the fifth year option on these first round picks, which even at that time I don't even know if there was that at the time. But I guess I just kind of want to have everyone get over that. How he was rescued from a disorganized franchise, which yes, they were, but they also put Calvin Johnson on the field with him. They tried to put team together to win, and when it ultimately didn't work out, I just don't see why we have to villainize the Detroit Lions and that organization for what they were unable to do. I mean, if you really wanted to help the Detroit Lions, maybe you should just relocate the Lions. Maybe you'd be able to attract more players to come play for that team if they were no longer in Detroit. You know, so that was one thing. I'm glad I got that off my chest. I've been kind of mulling over whether I should say that or not because I don't want to come off as a complete um, either as an idiot or as a inconsiderate person. But the truth is, I just kind of am over this narrative and I'm kind of over the whole story behind it. Um, Matthew Stafford decided to sign that extension and stay with them and get paid, and he's going to continue to get paid. So I do not feel that bad for you to have endured that. You made the choice, and if winning was as big of a priority, you would have prioritized your signing and your choices a little differently when that time came. So my next thing is the Baker Mayfield saga will continue. And I was having a conversation with a friend about this. I think the Browns are obviously this whole situation has played out very, very, I want to say poorly, but I don't think that's the right word. With the evolution of the NFL today, if you don't have these top tier quarterbacks, you're going to struggle. And it's clear to me that the Browns felt that Baker Mayfield's ceiling had been reached and that there was nowhere else to go but to try and go get someone like Deshaun Watson. So when you have this situation play out, you know how Baker Mayfield sitting here wondering where he's going to go. Well, based off of what happened in the first round of the draft, there are some options open still. Obviously, Seattle, Carolina, maybe even the New York Giants, if they feel that way after declining the fifth year option on Daniel Jones. However, I would want no part of bringing on more salary, and they don't really necessarily have um, the room in the salary cap to do that. But it's a it's a very very interesting, very unorthodox situation, and I firmly believe what I told my friend in the beginning is I believe they're going to hold on to Baker Mayfield and ask him or tell him he needs to play for them in the event Deshaun Watson is suspended. Now the NFL is known for dragging its feet on things like this, so I don't expect them to have anything out until probably 2023 until these civil litigations are solved. And so Baker Mayfield is going to be in a very interesting position for a while. So we're going to see how that goes here into day two, which is um, in about, in a few hours tomorrow evening, and see what rounds two and rounds three come up with. But before I go into my draft review, reviewing the first round, I just want to thank everybody for coming out and listening to the Astronomical Sports Podcast. I do enjoy hopping on here and sharing my thoughts, my feelings, and whatever insights I have. As you know, the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or you can just Google Astronomical Sports Podcast and it will take you to Anchor, which is a host site from Spotify where you can listen and go directly to the site as well. So we do have a Twitter account at Astro Sports Pod. And so if you have any questions, would just like to give us a follow, share some love, please feel free to go there. And one other thing is we do have a YouTube channel, the Astronomical Sports Podcast, where all these videos are posted, usually within a day of the podcast episode coming out. So please feel free to take the time to listen and drop us some likes, subscribe, and give us any feedback you can. I'm recording this a little late, so I apologize. I might be a little tired. So let's hop into this draft. The Jacksonville Jaguars took Trayvon Walker, number one overall. I'm not overly surprised by this. He has a physical ceiling that we are not sure has been met yet. And he had great combine results, national championship team, starter on a defense that was unfairly great in a sense. They just dominated teams all year, and they were very good against Alabama in the national championship game. So this move does not surprise me. It doesn't obviously pop. It's not a big move. It's not something that would create or cause you to be overly excited. It's just maybe a little bit safer. Maybe let's see what we can get out of this guy with his physical gifts and his abilities. So, and then obviously you had the Detroit Lions taking the hometown kid, Aiden Hutchinson. I am not a big fan of Aiden Hutchinson in general. I believe the argument can be made that this draft was not full of a lot of top tier prospects. And obviously Aiden Hutchinson had a great year last year. Um, Heisman finalists, whatnot. But I don't know how that's going to translate into the NFL. I don't know if he has the physical gifts that will allow him to become what most number two overall picks become in in the NFL. So the jury's going to be out on that one. I mean, culturally he makes sense, and I believe Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions are really happy to have him. So as long as they find the fit, find the fit is perfect, then there shouldn't be any problems with how they're able to integrate him into their defense. So the third overall pick from the Houston Texans was Derek Stingley Jr., which we all know Derek Stingley Jr. had amazing 2019, kind of fell off a cliff after that, disappeared, but he has amazing physical and abilities, and has proven that he can play under pressure, obviously being a national champion and such like that. So I felt like this was kind of I didn't think that they would be taking Derek Stingley here. I thought it might be Sauce Gardner or Ike Ikwanu. But the Texans are basically weighing their options of understanding that they need to build this roster around the quarterback, and then either they're going to stick with Davis Mills or they will find a free agent that they're able to go in and go in and drop in and sustain it, kind of like what the Broncos have done and so on. So I really enjoyed what the Jets did in the first round this year. I believe Sauce Gardner at 4 for them was just a slam dunk, no brainer. They need to be able to compete with the wide receivers that are now in that division. They need to be able to have a corner, eliminate one, an alpha wide receiver that you see, or at least be able to make it difficult for that to happen. I think Sauce Gardner has all those abilities, and he's comes from a winning program there at Cincinnati, even though it's smaller. And I think he's going to be a great fit. I think he's going to give them the ability to maneuver their secondary and be prepared for what's going to come. And obviously, just very excited to see how that pick is going to play out. So the Giants at 5 took Kayvon Thibodeau, who was, I guess, at the beginning of the season or at the end of last year was looking like the number one overall pick for this draft before the injury, um, before the season played out. So a lot of criticism on his motivation, his mindset. But I believe the Giants came through with a very good value at number 5 and an edge rusher that has a lot of the physical gifts and a little bit more of the versatility compared to Aiden Hutchinson in terms of his ability to possibly drop back into coverage, play a little bit more, um, play a little bit more of a versatile role in that sense. So don't I don't mind the pick. I find it to be safe and realistic, and they also had a pick at 7, so they were able to address some needs there as well. So overall, I think they took best available or what they believe to be best available, and that was Kayvon Thibodeau. Next off the board at number 6, which when I saw the clock going down and the time running out, I was almost at the point where they are either about to trade this pick and move back, or they're about to take a quarterback and throw everybody for a loop. In my opinion, they made a great pick here with Ike Ekwonu. I think they got the best tackle in the draft. I think he's going to be a good fit for them. It allows them to have a tackle for whenever they do bring in that franchise quarterback that they are looking for. And I don't believe there was really any outstanding talents at quarterback that required you to pick any of them this early in the draft. So I'm perfectly okay with this, and I think this was it maybe not maybe my favorite pick or whatnot. I don't know. I had a lot of really picks I really enjoyed here. So Giants come back again at 7 and took Evan Neal, offensive tackle from Alabama, obviously addressing one of their needs. Big kid, obviously played for Nick Saban, played in the SEC. I'm sure it'll translate well. Not surprised by this pick at all. It's a smart pick, and they drafted someone who's fully capable of being a tackle for probably maybe 10 years or more in the league, depending on health and everything else. So next, you have the Atlanta Falcons taking Drake London at number 8, and I wouldn't say I was surprised. I was a little surprised it was Drake London, but they do have a history of taking USC. No, excuse me, I'm thinking of the Jets, but they do have a wide receiver need with Calvin Ridley out next year, and then they obviously have Kyle Pitts, who's an emerging star that really needs to have someone else. Drawing coverage on them. And Drake London has a really unique profile, and he broke out very early in his college career with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Michael Pittman Jr. on the roster as well. So I think this was a solid pick by the Falcons. I mean, obviously their quarterback situation is not the best, but they have a wide receiver to work with, and they'll be able to build around that, and eventually when they're ready to get that quarterback, they can they can support that with some wide receivers. So Seattle takes the offensive tackle out of Mississippi State, Charles Cross. I found this very ironic because all the years that they spent not getting an offensive lineman for Russell Wilson, they just decided to spend the top 10 pick on one. So there you go. I guess that tells you everything you need to know about what the Seahawks are really doing. they've all been saying that they're not in a rebuilding mode, but the writing's on the wall at this point. I don't see how a tackle at number 9 is going to change your franchise into a contender unless you're about to make a trade to get a franchise quarterback, which I doubt at this point, because you should have just, if that was the case, you should have never let Russell Wilson go. So, good pick. They obviously need to build in the trenches, have a tackle to help offset some of the pass rush that comes from the 49ers and the Rams. That is still a tough division. Regardless if Russell Wilson's there or not, it's actually a tough division for the Seahawks. But they make it a little bit easier for everyone else in there. So we'll see what the Seahawks decide to do over time and see how this rebuild goes. But it's definitely not a contending team, and I do not want to hear that it is. So at number 10, the New York Jets take Garrett Wilson, wide receiver at Ohio State. I really like the pick. I kind of had him above Drake London in terms of wide receivers, as being a more talented, quicker, more capable wide receiver in terms of just being able to run various routes. But the Jets are trying to build a team around Zach Wilson, and they have some good some good players already. Some on the offensive line, some on the defensive line, and then obviously with a receiver like Elijah Moore to pair with, and then Corey Davis out there on the edge, and I think they understand that they need a little bit of speed, they need a little bit of playmaking ability, and Garrett Wilson should offer that. We'll just see how long it takes for him to get adjusted. If he's anything like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, he could pop as early as week 1. So it's exciting. I think that a lot of Jets fans will be very excited about how this draft went. And the Saints traded up and took the 11th pick from the Washington Commanders. I got to get used to saying that, to take Chris Olave, wide receiver at Ohio State. I thought this was going to be a quarterback move, but clearly I was wrong again. But I've always liked Chris Olave. I thought he was a great receiver. He paired well with Garrett Wilson. If he had come out last year, he probably would have been the first. He might have been the first wide receiver, the wide receiver 1 in the class. Well, no, Jamar Chase would have been the number 2 wide receiver in the class, but in this class, it's a little bit tighter bunched in terms of where the talent is, where, the players are going and things like that. So I think it's a great pick in terms of what you can expect from him. He'd be a solid wide receiver, and they really needed one to pair with Michael Thomas, and Jameis Winston has some weapons, and they'll have him for 4 or 5 years. So the Detroit Lions moved up and traded with the Minnesota Vikings to take Jamison Williams, wide receiver out of Alabama. Jamison Williams is interesting. I know he had the injury, but I really like him. I thought he was a very productive wide receiver, even though it seemed to be only a 1-year sample size. But when you're on a roster behind Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, the I forget his first name, but Mechie, like when you're in the mix of all that, it's very hard for me to want to be overly critical about 1 year of production. I mean, you were able to produce at that level. So, and the Detroit Lions are not necessarily going to be one of those teams that is going to be looking to win a championship this year. So if they do move off of golf after this year, they're going to have weapons to support whatever quarterback they're able to get and bring in. So I really like the pick as well. I'm a fan of Jamison Williams. I think he's got a lot of promise, a lot of upside. So Philadelphia Eagles traded with the Houston Texans to get the 13th overall pick, and they took the defensive tackle out of Georgia, Jordan Davis. And obviously, with the, and not to say the loss, but the absence of Fletcher Cox right now, Jordan Davis is set to fit in and to become that cornerstone of the defensive line for the Eagles. So the Eagles had an interesting draft, and they obviously had an interesting trade to get A.J. Brown from the Titans, and then obviously signed him to a 4-year, $100 million extension. it's clear to me that they're putting everything into this offense for Jalen Hurts to succeed. So I personally think that if it doesn't happen this year, they're moving on and they're going to find a quarterback. But the situation is looking so much better, every year, and they've got picks for 2023 as well. They might be able to get a rookie quarterback there, or maybe they're going to be in a position to make a trade for a quarterback. So by and large, it's just the Philadelphia Eagles are turning this into a very interesting situation for the NFC East. You know, I definitely could see them being the top team in that division if they're able to get this offense right. But obviously, I'm getting on a tangent here. This is about the draft. So, Jordan Davis, defensive tackle, another good pick, another guy from that Georgia defense that just excelled last year. So, the Baltimore Ravens came up and took Kyle Hamilton at the 14th pick, safety out of Notre Dame. Makes a lot of sense to me. Ever since Earl Thomas left the team, they've kind of needed to fill that void in the secondary with the safety to pair with Marlon Humphreys and their other cornerback. So I think it's a smart move. Kyle Hamilton does have a lot of upside, and so there's not much to say besides the Ravens doing what the Ravens always do, and that is pull off some nice draft moves. So, and by the way, before I get any further, credit to NFL.com for, I guess they didn't let me, but I'm using their site to go through these draft picks, so credit to them, and a lot of appreciation to give me the opportunity to go over this with everyone. So, Houston Texans take offensive lineman out of Texas A&M, Kenyon Green. This is kind of the move I thought they were going to make earlier in the draft at 13, but obviously, they didn't have to necessarily reach at that point, so they're able to bring in some more picks, get an offensive lineman to help support that offense and support Davis Mills. So another smart, simple, easy pick in my opinion to get that roster back on track. So the Washington Commanders took Jahan Dotson, wide receiver out of Penn State, with the 16th overall pick. I'm a little surprised they didn't take someone like Treylon Burks, who was sitting there. Treylon Burks, for some folks, was the number one receiver in this class, especially from a fantasy football perspective. But they went with Dotson, wide receiver at Penn State. He's another really good wide receiver, good receiver option that they can turn to and pair with McLaurin and Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson out of the backfield. Obviously, trying to support Carson Wentz as much as possible. So, good pick. The NFL is kind of going that way where you got to have the weapons to support these quarterbacks because the only way to keep up is to score points, obviously. So I'm not surprised to see as many wide receivers going here. I think they understand how having these wide receivers on these rookie contracts is coming at a premium, especially with how salaries have gone up for the premier wide receivers in the NFL. So then you had the Los Angeles Chargers taking Zion Johnson, offensive lineman out of Boston College. Just another reason you have a great quarterback in Justin Herbert, so we're going to protect him. So I totally understand this move. If Jamison Williams had fall, I believe that they were the dark horse to take him. And that would have been a very amazing landing spot for him. But overall, Chargers had a great offseason, making a solid pick in the draft, getting an offensive lineman that can help them. So no harm, no foul. They're in a very tough division, probably the toughest division in football now. So keeping Justin Herbert healthy and upright to deliver the football to their playmaking wide receivers is the most important thing that they can do. And they bring in a kid. I say kid. They bring in a young man who is capable of helping them in that role. So as a result of the trade with A.J. Brown, the Tennessee Titans draft Treylon Burks, wide receiver out of Arkansas, with the 18th pick. So basically they just swapped receiver to get another receiver on a rookie contract, and so they can buy some time before they have to pay them. Um, Makes sense from a salary standpoint, and based on their offense being run first, I think Traylon Burks will fit them well, and it gives them an opportunity to uh, kind of work around the Derrick Henry contract, which I believe is nearing its end either this year or next year. But they've got some few other things to think about. Ryan Tannehill's in his mid 30s or so, and so they're gonna start looking at what the future is for that franchise at the quarterback position. So I I don't know much about this guy Trevor Penning, but the Saints took him 19th overall. He's an offensive tackle out of Northern Iowa. Obviously, when they lost their left tackle Teron Armstead, they needed to find someone that could fill that role. And I believe they're going to look at Trevor Penning to be the cornerstone of that. Um, it makes a lot of sense to me to use the draft to help a need, and they definitely needed a tackle there. So the Pittsburgh Steelers took Mr. Kenny Pickett, quarterback out of Pittsburgh, with the 20th overall pick. All the hype about Malik Willis, and I kind of blame the NFL media and everything for this, is after he made that deep throw, after all these things had happened, it was just so much hype and just so much interest about this quarterback. Like, oh, he's just got all this upside. And I mean, I cannot believe that we're not looking at this kid as much. And, just look at him, just pay attention. And the truth is, there was not enough film against quality teams or quality opponents that gave the Steelers a reason to take Malik Willis here. I believe that since they were so close to Kenny Pickett from the fact that he went to the University of Pittsburgh and they were able to see him up close, this pick made sense to them. And he's accustomed to the weather in Pittsburgh, even though it's not like an overly, um, it's not a big hurdle, but it feels like it's at home. This was a safe pick for them, and they need a quarterback. And so my only concern is if Mr. Trubisky comes out there and has a great year, you're not going to be able to put Kenny Pickett in. Um, Now, can Trubisky do that? I don't know, but I also saw a little bit more upside with Trubisky over Kenny Pickett. So I'm kind of this one. This one really interests me. I kind of thought they might go with maybe some defense help or offensive line help, and kind of see what they could do at quarterback after this year. But they have their guy, and we're going to see how this plays out for them in the long run. So the Kansas City Chiefs took Trent McDuffie, 21st overall cornerback out of Washington. Makes sense. Secondary needs help. I believe they lost. They obviously don't have Tyrann Mathieu anymore, and I believe they lost another, or Daniel Sorensen, or I believe they lost another corner, but I can't remember the name at the moment. This is the pick they got from New England I believe it was during the season. So I don't have much to say. Kansas City's still playing for that contending window, and they need defensive help badly in that division because there's some good wide receivers and some good quarterbacks in there that are going to make it very difficult for them. So I'm going to toot my own horn here because I was adamant a week ago or so whenever I made this video about some thoughts about the NFL draft that the Green Bay Packers would not take a wide receiver in the first round. I, I'm gonna, reserve the right to say I told you so, but there's an asterisk to it. But they take Quay Walker, linebacker out of Georgia, bolstering that defense after they lost to Darius Smith and things like that. So totally understand why they did this. And obviously, coming off of that great Georgia defense that was a part of the team that won the national championship, makes sense. They're filling needs. That's what they're going to do. Aaron Rodgers is going to have a lot of fun throwing to him. Obviously, he won't, but you know what I mean. He's going to have a lot of fun dealing with that, but he got paid, and that's the most important thing. So the Buffalo Bills traded up. Well, technically, The Arizona Cardinals traded the 23rd overall pick for Marquise Brown from the Baltimore Ravens, and then the Baltimore Ravens turned around and traded this pick to the Buffalo Bills. And they took the cornerback out of Florida, Kaiir Elam, which makes a lot of sense to me. I was wrong on my prediction that they would take Brees Hall in the first round. I thought an off. I thought a really versatile, capable running back would fit what they are needing and what they were wanting to do. Um, offensively, and I was really looking forward to see him landing there. Obviously, that's not it, but maybe it'll happen in the second round. Although I think Brees Hall is pretty up there on the list of prospects at this point. So we'll see. But they got a nice young corner, physical corner, out of the SEC who knows how to play against some some top tier receivers, top tier competition. So makes a lot of sense. They want to pair someone with Tre'Davious White and be able to provide some sort of some sort of not may not necessarily be shut down, but be able to limit some of the weapons on the outside. And so taking the corner here makes sense. So the Dallas Cowboys with the 24th pick took Tyler Smith, offensive tackle out of Tulsa, which obviously to me makes a ton of sense because uh, they lost Lalo Collins. Tyron Smith has been injured. He's older. That offensive line has gotten older over years. So it is time for them to address it, and this move allows them to. So they'll be able to slot this kid in who will probably start from the beginning, if I had to guess. And it just, helps them at a position that has kind of gone neglected over the past few years from when they had the best offensive line, and I believe it was 2016. They had a great offensive line, and I think this is just going to make it a little bit better so that they're able to do what they need to do in the run game and keep Dak upright. So this is one of my favorite picks. So Baltimore obviously moved back, and they got the center out of Iowa, Tyler Linderbaum. I think he's a quality offensive lineman. I think they'll be able to play him at guard. And I think this is just another one of those Baltimore Ravens moves that just seems smart, calculated, and capable of helping them not just this year, but in the long term. So I'm I'm interested to see how it's going to play out for them. Obviously, they gave away a wide receiver in in Marquise Brown, and they didn't get one in the draft. So we'll see what they're going to do offensively. But they're going to get their running backs back. The whole team is going to be healthy. And Tyler Lindenbaum is going to help them offensively. So I really like that pick. Great pick. I'm all for it. So the New York Jets got this pick from Tennessee. And they came up so they could take Jermaine Johnson, the defensive end for Florida State, who I believe has a ton of upside. Really excited for what this kid could bring to that defense and to that New York Jets team. We're talking about a kid that maybe if he had played on a bigger stage or on a better team, we'd have been talking about him a little bit more. But I believe the Jets had a phenomenal draft. They've got 3 players, all with upside, that they can put out there on the field to win football games. And right now, the New York Jets I say desperately, they desperately need a quality football team and they need to come back. And in that city and that media circus, I think they did great. I think they did exactly what they should. And this gives them 3 young cornerstone players that are on rookie contracts for 4 to 5 years that they're going to be able to work with. So Tampa Bay trades back with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars move up. And they take Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. The Jaguars have needed defensive help after they cut Miles Jack, which I'm still a little surprised on. They obviously needed to fill that void, and they addressed the need with Devin Lloyd. So makes sense. Good player. I believe he's one of the best in the Pac-12. So, happy for the Jags, and I feel like they did pretty well in this draft. They got a lot of upside, raw talent, so we'll see where it goes from there. The Green Bay Packers took a defensive tackle out of Georgia, Devontae Wyatt. obviously love the defensive side of the football in the first round, so they prioritized, and it's not a wide receiver. So I know they got a solid player out of this. Just bolstering that defense because they did have some losses there, on that side of the football. So perfectly, I wish I could say I'm on board or truly support it, but at the end of the day, I just know this is a Green Bay Packers move, and congratulations. So this one kind of came. Well, to me, it came to no surprise. New England Patriots take guard Cole Strange from Tennessee Chattanooga with the 29th overall pick. The reason why it doesn't come as a surprise to me is because this is exactly what the New England Patriots would do through their scouting, through how they operate. They're not necessarily looking at the big names unless it's Mac Jones. So it's fine. They'll know how to work it, and they're obviously going to replace the guard they traded to Tampa Bay. I think it was last year or during this offseason. So this is their answer for it, and I expect them to develop it, and it should work for them. So with the 30th overall pick, the Kansas City Chiefs took George Karlaftis, edge out of Purdue. He had a lot of upside. Another one of those names that just kind of slipped down the board because of where he went to school and being a part of the conference he was in and things like that. But Kansas City Chiefs at least get something to help them with the pass rush in that division against three other very good, if not great, quarterbacks. So it's going to be that division is going to be really tough, and I'm really excited to see the NFL season play out, and hopefully it's a slugfest because those are the most fun. And then Cincinnati Beagles with the 31st overall pick take Daxton Hill, safety out of Michigan. Obviously, they have a defensive need as well, so they addressed it by taking Daxton Hill. And then from the Minnesota Vikings trading back with the Detroit Lions at the 32nd overall pick, they took the safety out of Georgia Lewis Sign. Obviously needing secondary help. I believe they still have Harrison Smith. So he'll get to learn from a veteran and be able to adjust and hopefully play a role for that team this season. So that rounds out the first 32 picks of the NFL draft. I apologize for the pace. I also apologize for the yawns, but I really wanted to get this video out because I wanted to talk about it while it was fresh on my mind. So I love the Jets draft, Sauce, Wilson, and I forgot the kid's name. Oh, Jermaine Johnson. Perfect. We had two big trades with AJ Brown goes to the Eagles, Marquise Brown goes to the Cardinals. It's kind of surprising Deebo wasn't dealt. But it sounds like the Jets were not interested in trading the 10th overall pick, for a guy who doesn't want to run the football. So I understand where Deebo's coming from in this situation, but I also think he needs to understand where his value, comes from in a sense is he became the top 10 wide receiver statistically when he was carrying the football and when he was running, rushing the football, So I think that at the end of the day, this really just comes down to money. And I don't believe they wanted to pay him to be a running back and wide receiver. And I believe that's what he's asking for. So I believe they saw more upside with Garrett Wilson. And I do not blame them at the bit. You get 5 years of contractual control over a wide receiver who profiles as a better wide receiver than Deebo Samuel. That's the thing is Deebo Samuel's never been the greatest wide receiver ever. His value came when he was that dual threat player. So it's going to be interesting how this is going to play out with San Francisco now. San Francisco wanted the world, which I guess I can't blame them, but I think this comes down to a weird. I'm reserving my opinion on the 49ers, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. because they kind of did this with the whole Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Like they're sitting here, oh, well, we've got 2 second-round picks on the board for Jimmy Garoppolo. If you did, you would have taken it, in my opinion. So you're bluffing. So you're generating these narratives, and you're trying to play. You're trying to bluff these guys. But the truth is, you don't have a bluff. Jimmy Garoppolo has shoulder surgery. Why would anybody give you 2 second-round picks for a quarterback that they won't be able to see throw until what, July at earliest, maybe August? So I understand what they're trying to accomplish, but I also don't think that they fully or fully appreciate the knowledge and the nature of other franchises. I just found that so bizarre, and I think they wanted the world for Deebo Samuel because his value went so up because they turned him into a wide back, as he said. And I didn't I don't think there's anything for the 49ers to be asking for. He's a second round pick. He's a middle of the road wide receiver if he's only playing wide receiver. So you pick and choose your battles in this. And right now, I just don't see how Debo has any leverage unless you're going to carry the ball 5 to 7 times on top of anywhere from 5 to 10 targets. You have no value to another team. So if the New York Jets are sitting there saying I have to sign him to a $30 million a year deal and I can't use him as a running back, then what would be the point of trading for him? In my opinion, none whatsoever. Take the upside with Garrett Wilson with one of these wide receivers, call it a day, and be happy because this was smart. They could have pulled a Jets move and traded 3 or 4 picks to him. It's like, where does Debo think that his value is that of Tyreek Hill? Or sorry, where does Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch think that his value is worth 4 or 5 picks off of one season where half of it was spent running the football? I know. I'm sure a lot of folks will say I'm wrong, and will say that I'm not. I don't understand it, but I just look at it as in a sense of you have to understand where your value comes from, and you have to understand the overall landscape of the NFL. Running backs do not get paid because running backs take a toll. Your value came from playing a position that is not as highly sought as a wide receiver. And when you are a wide receiver, you're average. So we'll see how this plays out if they're able to actually get anything for him. I don't think they will. I think they're going to end up having to pay him. I think Debo's going to have to accept the fact that this is how this is going to work. But we'll see. I've been wrong plenty of times in my life, so I'm happy to be wrong here. Um, it's kind of like Marquise Brown to the Cardinals. How many more wide receivers you got? DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Rondell Moore, Marquise Brown. You're gonna have Zach Ertz. I'm interested to see how that's gonna work. I mean, how are you gonna cover them? Number one, but number two, uh, if I'm not mistaken, Marquise Brown's gonna be due a contract in a year or so. So we'll see. I understand why they did it. Why take the risk? They really needed a wide receiver over anything else. So they got a relatively productive one in that sense. So um, I think AJ Brown and the Eagles is a good trade for them. I think AJ Brown's a stud. I'm gonna be interested to see how that works fantasy wise. Um, but Jalen Hurts has all the weapons around him now, and if he's unable to produce, I'm sure we're gonna see a quarterback change there. But I guess we'll see where this leaves Baker Mayfield, obviously Deebo Samuel, a few other guys as we head into the second and third rounds tomorrow. I'm interested to see when these running backs will start to come off the board. Kind of sets up for some of these um, lower level teams to take a running back, but at the same time, I'm always on the position running back should probably be the last position you fill if you're a contender. So, um, you know, it's going to be interesting, but Who doesn't get hyped for an NFL draft? I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed talking with y'all about it. Uh, and I'm gonna enjoy watching it some more tomorrow. I will probably do another video on it, another podcast episode on it, but it may be over the remainder of the draft and not just one round. But obviously, this was a big round. So if you enjoyed the episode, please drop a like, subscribe, um, like however whatever you can on any of the platforms, Spotify, Apple. Go directly to our site on Anchor. Go to our YouTube channel. Go to Twitter at Astro Sports Pod. Follow us, like us, subscribe. I'm just very grateful I got the chance to talk with y'all about this. More episodes will be coming out, and until then, I'll see you.